Hey folks, this is Abel James, and thanks so much for joining us on the Fat Burning Man Show, where we talk about real food and real results. What's the difference between being in lockdown and being in jail? The answer from today's guest will surprise you. Today I'm grateful to be here with my new friend, Doug Bopst. Doug is a personal trainer, author, and host of the Adversity Advantage podcast. Also, he has a unique perspective as someone who actually spent time in jail. A former convicted felon and drug addict, Doug made the best of his time in jail to discover fitness and reinvent himself, which brings me to a quick point. A lot of people, when you're looking around in these challenging circumstances, let's say, of the past year and change, a lot of people are getting weaker, or they're getting broken, or all sorts of bad things are happening around them. They're letting it get to them. And then a small minority of folks are actually getting stronger because of this. They're getting into dojo mode and getting disciplined. Doug has a lot of interesting perspective on how we can get out the other side of all these challenging times even stronger than we would have otherwise been. So Doug's story was featured in a documentary film called From Felony to Fitness to Free. And of this year, I just want to say he's 12 years sober. So congratulations to Doug. You're going to dig this show. But before we get there, here's a note that came in from Connie in our 14-day wild challenge with our new app. She says, I am loving this challenge. 5 days and 5 pounds lost. Wow, I am now at my lowest weight since I intentionally started trying to lose weight last May. From Connie. Connie, thank you so much for this note. I'm so glad that you like the wild challenge. Of course, when we release a new app like this, which is a really robust platform, there are lots of bugs, and I appreciate you guys being patient with us, but we continuously make improvements, and we're psyched about where we're going with this. We're going to be doing monthly wild challenges with a different theme. So if you're interested and you want some accountability and some fun in this whole process, and you get to meet me and my wife and the whole team, you can visit us over at fatburningman.com/app. That's fatburningman.com/app. You'll find the wild challenge. You can track your daily nutrition, movement, meditation, intermittent fasting, mindset, and much more. It even hooks in with your smartwatch and Fitbits and all of that, all the techie gizmos. We have a lot of integrations that are working out well, actually. So if you're into that, go visit our new app, check out the Wild Challenge. And great news, some of you already know this, but we just upgraded our formulation of vitamin D stack over at wildsuperfoods.com. Now it's 2.5 times higher potency of vitamin D3, along with the cofactors vitamins A, E, K1 and K2, so you can go stock up on vitamin D stack. A lot of times we'll do buy one, get one offers or giveaways. So if you're in the United States right now, it's only in the US, folks, but check out wildsuperfoods.com, and we highly recommend vitamin D stack. It's one of my daily favorites. All right, on to this show with Doug Bopst. We're chatting about the surprising difference between being in jail and being under lockdown, how to funnel addictive behavior into something positive, how to use fitness as a catalyst for change in your life, and tons more. Let's go hang out with Doug. Welcome back, folks. Today we're here with Doug Bopst, a personal trainer, author, and host of the Adversity Advantage podcast. A former convicted felon and drug addict, Doug utilized his time in jail to discover fitness and reinvent himself. His story was featured in a documentary film titled From Felony to Fitness to Free, and as of this recording, I believe he's 12 years sober. With the drug epidemic at an all-time high, Doug is now on a crusade to share his story in hopes of inspiring others to pursue fitness and overcome addiction. Doug, I'm so psyched to talk to you, man.
Abel, man, I am just as psyched to talk to you. I appreciate you having me on. I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Right on. So, man, there are so many places that I'd like to go, but for you, we're just talking about the unique perspective that you have on lockdown and the difference between like actually being in jail and just kind of like being a person in society now. Maybe you can just riff on that to start.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was incarcerated. It's been so 12 years ago today, I would be incarcerated. When I was sentenced September 30th, 2008. And I reported to jail October 21st, 2008. And today's as we're recording, it's November the 18th. So yeah, I was in jail like the worst time of the year. Because I was in there for a few months, but I was in there Halloween, Thanksgiving, and Christmas.
Oh,
yeah. And so, we were talking before we were recording on the difference in isolation in jail and the difference in isolation now. And there's a bunch of differences. There's obviously some similarities, right? There's similarities in the sense that you're having somebody else kind of tell you where you can and can't go. You're having somebody else tell you that you can't travel to certain places, that sort of thing. But the differences are, I'll start with a few. So number one, when you're in jail, you can't hop on a call like this.
Right.
I couldn't, if I wanted to, release some stress, or if I wanted to inspire somebody, I couldn't just be like, you know what, I'm going to get on Skype, I'm going to get on Zoom, and I'm going to talk to somebody. Couldn't do that. I couldn't pick up the phone at will and call people I wanted to. I couldn't go into my refrigerator and get whatever I wanted to eat, so to speak, right? But in there, I think the thing is that we were talking about earlier is at least I knew where I stood when I was in jail. Like, I knew I was in jail. Like, A plus B equaled C. I knew there was a law. I broke the law and I was in jail, where I think now it's different because there's a lot of people that are on like two sides of the coin, right? And I'm not trying to downplay COVID or anything. I mean, I believe COVID is something. I'm just saying there's people that are like, like, I kind of believe that it's this big thing. And then there's people that are like, I kind of believe it's nothing, but you know what? I kind of believe it. And there's so many people that are in the middle, so people don't know what to believe, or there's so much gray area. Whereas when you're isolated in jail, because now it's like, are we gonna we lock down? Then we don't lock down. You can have people in your house, over 10 people. You can't. You can travel out of the state without quarantine. You can't. Like, so much back and forth. And I think people are now questioning the fact that, like, why is somebody telling me to stay in my house because of an illness? Like, why? And I'm not saying that people shouldn't. I'm not downplaying the severity of the virus. All I'm saying is I'm just speaking from what I've heard from people's minds and what you see on the internet. It's like, well, I'm not breaking the law. Why do I have to stay in my house?
Yeah.
Why can't I get on an airplane, and why do I have to wear a mask? Like, there's no laws in place. There are recommendations. There's guidelines. We're doing it obviously for the safety of others, but I'm just telling you what might go in the minds of some other people who are thinking these things. Also, that in a time right now, people are, it's gone on for so long. People don't know what to believe. Right? People are scared. People are feel fearful. Many people have lost their jobs. Many people have had relationships fall apart. Many people have lost their homes. They've taken massive hits financially. Mental health. I mean, we already, up until this point, before COVID, people were talking about is the opioid epidemic, right?
Yeah.
Fentanyl,
too much screen
heroin,
time.
right? And then now, think about the effect that's had on people's mental health, right? It's exacerbated the mental health problems in our country, as well as increased the severity of the drug use. People are doing a lot more drugs. They're drinking a lot more. I mean, I don't remember the exact day, but I think it was like in the springtime, right after this thing started, alcohol sales were up like a few $100.
Right.
Not a few $100, a few 100%.
Mm-hmm.
And so you got people now that have lost their jobs and lost all these things, and a lot of it's not anyone's fault. So of course people are going to question and fall into this cycle of pessimism and cynicism and feeling sorry for themselves and blaming people, because, I mean, nobody could see this coming, right? I mean, maybe there's a few people like had some inside scoop in some places that were like, you know what, something like this could happen. But I would say 99% of the population could not see something like this happening.
Right.
And so there's a big difference between that. When you're in jail, you get sentenced, like, deep down, as much as you want to blame other people, you broke the law, like, internally, and you're like, all right, I'm going to jail. Like, I got to deal with the consequences. So, and I think that people, when this first happened, people were reaching out to me because they knew my backstory, and they were saying, "How do you deal with the isolation? As somebody who was incarcerated, how do you deal with it?" And what I tell people, it's no different than if there was no isolation. You focus on yourself and you focus on the things you can control, right? Like when I was in jail, the first maybe first 2 3 weeks, first month, I focused on everything I could not control. I had all these worries, these anxieties. Will my family ever accept me again? Will I ever find love? Will I ever lose this weight? Which I could control, but that was like something that was like in the back of my mind. I was just asking these questions of things that were so far ahead in the future that I couldn't control in that moment. Or would I ever get arrested again? Would I ever be addicted to drugs? Like I was asking all these questions on things that were in a way out of my control. And then when I started to really hone in on what I could control and take personal responsibility and accountability for my choices and behaviors every single day, things changed. When I took personal responsibility for my health and I started exercising every day and moving my body, things changed, right? I lost some weight in jail, gained this never before seen confidence, self-esteem went through the roof, my energy, sleep. I mean, I can go on and on about the benefits of exercise, but I'm sure your audience listening to you, we all know the importance of exercise. People just need to do it.
Right.
I don't
That's
think
the tricky part.
I don't think we have an issue with knowledge as far as exercise. We have an issue with staying accountable to ourselves and doing the things we know we should be doing every single day to improve our lives. That's the issue.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to pass the buck onto someone else and blame somebody else when you gain weight. It's easy to pass the buck onto somebody else and blame, your spouse, your friend, because you chose to binge on 3, piece of pizza 7, 8 days in a row. It's easy. The hard thing is looking at yourself in the mirror and saying, you know what? I feel really freaking uncomfortable right now. I'm freaking scared. I'm fearful. I have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring. I have no idea. But I'm going to do the hard thing and sit in this discomfort, embrace it, and do the things that I know I need to do that will lessen the discomfort as I move through it in a healthy way. And it might not feel as good as doing drugs or drinking a bunch of alcohol or going on a money binge or sex in the moment. It might not feel as good at first, but it'll feel way better when you get done, right? Because when you do drugs, when you're done, you're like, man, why'd I do that? Like after the high wears off, you get the shame sets in and the fear, and you're like, how am I going to get this feeling again? Because I'm no longer numb, and now I have to deal with the aftermath of making my situation even worse than it was before I did this. Whereas when you go for a run, you go for a walk, yeah, you don't feel like immediately better like when you start, but when you get done, there's a sense of accomplishment when you get done the run.
Yeah.
Because you're like, wow, like I really didn't want to do this, but I did it anyway, like on to the next thing. And that's even something now that I tell people if they're thinking about using or thinking about going out and getting hammered to deal with their problems. I'm like, look, listen, do you. I'm not going to make choices for you. This is your life. I can share my experiences and you can kind of take what I say with a grain of salt, and if you will. I said, but just try this. Go for a 20-minute run or walk, whatever you can do, and do it 2 or 3 sets of as many push-ups as you can. Then decide if you want to do drugs. Right. Just at least give yourself that option to alleviate the temptation, alleviate the stress, alleviate the craving. And so I'm bringing this all back, and to put a bow on it is when I was isolated in jail, I had to focus on what I could control in front of me. Health, the way I talk to myself, journaling, gratitude, the way I treat other people, like developing a level of respect for other human beings that I didn't know, which was something I'd never experienced before in my life in jail, right? That's a big thing, is respect. It's all people ask all the time, like, did you ever get in a fight? Did you do that? And most of the time, in my experience, not to say that fights don't break out, certainly they do. It's just about respecting each other and not thinking you're better than everybody. Everyone's in there for the same thing. They're just trying to do their time and get out, right? And so controlling all that, and it's all relatable to now, in quarantine, in isolation, in your life. Like you still have the same control over your health, whether you like it or not, and whether you want to blame COVID over your health you do today as you did before COVID. You might have this, might not have the same you know, accessories. You might not be able to go bench press or get on a squat rack or get on a machine or an elliptical, but you can certainly go for a walk outside. You can certainly bundle up and go for a run. You can certainly do push-ups, calisthenics, turn on YouTube or the TV and get like an on-demand workout program, which, by the way, you can't do in jail. You can certainly choose again to turn the freaking news off, right? Not to stay informed. I'm saying stay informed. Know what you need to know. If your local governor speaking, or if president or whoever is speaking on something that you know is important, you need to pay attention. You're like, okay, like I need to know what's going on, so I know what I need to do, like as far as like tactically speaking, like can I go to this place, can I go to that place? Cool. But take that time you were spending watching the news and invest it into listening to podcasts. It doesn't have to be like a self-development motivational podcast, but just something you learn that takes your attention and focus off of the negativity of the pandemic. Like channel that energy into something different. The biggest thing that I think people need to do when it comes to making a transformation is when they let go of whatever it is was their crutch, whether it was food, drugs, alcohol, sex, money. They need to find something to focus that energy on, because when you're an addict and when you're addicted to something like that, that takes so much of your focus and energy, that the big mistake people make is once it's gone, they have all this energy and they have all this time that they're like, well, what do I do with this? And you have two choices. You can either put it into something negative or put it into something positive. So channel it into positive resources around you. Develop a good group of people that are in your corner that you can surround yourself with and lean on. And it doesn't have to be in person. I mean, there's so many people now that are doing things on Zoom. They're getting together and playing games. They're getting together and just having the coffee. They are having dinner or whatever. Just pick a group of like-minded people that, support and challenge you. And then I would say also like really lean into gratitude, because even for me now, is isolation hard for me right now? It is, because for two reasons. One, for the same reason it is for everybody else, right? If somebody says they like being isolated, I can't say I 100% believe. We all like in some way to be around other people, and then I'm not saying in that same sentence that we don't need alone time. We do. I'm just saying, generally speaking, most people like to be with other people.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful. And the second part, getting back to what I was saying, why isolation has been tougher for me at the beginning, was it reminded me a lot of jail. Right. And it brought back some old memories, some old feelings, which I had to work through. Right. It's on me to do that. And so with that being said, I think you have to stay grateful, because I am so grateful now that my time isolated, I'm allowed to have conversations like you. I'm allowed to record podcasts. I'm allowed to call people, because if we spend so much time focusing on the things we don't have or we can't do, or places we can't go to, or people we can't see, you're going to be one pissed off, sad, pessimistic person, because there's a lot of things we can't do right now. Tons. And on the other side of this coin, and this is the last thing I'll say, and we can get into this either even deeper or some more stuff, is there's a lot of things we can do. There's a lot of things we can control. And COVID or not, you need to take responsibility for your choices and behaviors, right? That's one of the biggest things that I teach on my Adversity Advantage podcast is it's not the adversity that breaks us normally, okay? It's not that. Normally what happens, and again, there's like stragglers in every situation. You get into a horrific car accident or a massive death. Of course, that can have a massive impact. I'm talking about normal everyday stress, normal everyday barriers we face. It's not that breaks us. It's how we respond that breaks us, right? The issue isn't the fact that we lose a job. The issue is you lose a job and then you end up dealing with your stress of losing the job with drinking every day. And then you look back 10 years from now and you're addicted to alcohol and your marriage is falling apart. Your kids aren't talking to you, or whatever the case may be. It wasn't because this didn't happen because you lost your job. It happened because of the way you responded to that. And that's what I try to coach people on is life's going to happen, whether it's COVID, whether it's something else that happens next year, whether the economy tanks 2 years from now from everything going on right now, whether it's somebody who's in the office you don't like. There's going to be always going to be things that you don't like. What are you doing about it? Right? And that's like the big thing you have to ask yourself.
Yeah, and it's interesting because right now it's so easy to be scattered with our energy, but still, like resentful of the fact that we can't go to X restaurant or on Y vacation and that sort of thing. But if you were prevented from going on social media or like scrolling through the news or even calling your friends on Skype or whatever, then turning that focus inward, right? That internal locus of control, you can funnel all that energy there, get quick results, learn that it's worth it, and that's something that takes doing it every day, right? Like not just for a while, but you pretty much for the rest of your life. But if you do, then the better that you feel that you were talking about becomes so much like exponentially higher than the short-term pleasure or escape that you were looking for before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that people, when things come to the surface, like good for you. Now it's like giving you an opportunity to really look within and say, you know what, like, why is this bothering me so much? Or what can I do about it? How maybe it's an opportunity for you like never before to have all this time to work on your health or to write that book or to start that podcast or to rekindle that relationship, whatever it is. Because if you're spending all this time on the fact that you can't go to certain places, you can't have that vacation, you can't go into certain restaurants, and that's where all your energy goes, it's going to bring you down. It's going to bring down your relationships. It's going to bring down your performance at your job. It's going to bring your health down. And if you think about it, people's biggest fears right now, okay, with the pandemic, and even when this is, whenever this is aired, people will still be seeing the aftermath of the pandemic. And this is applicable no matter what. People's biggest fears right now are getting sick, losing money, having relationships fall apart because they can't connect in person, and their mental health, going into the dumps, right? Yet people do the polar opposite of what it takes to pretty much not guarantee, but literally do everything you can to have those things not be affected and honestly improve. People aren't, there's a lot of people that aren't exercising. There's a lot of people that are turning to drugs and alcohol. There's a lot of people that are just complaining all day and watching the news and doing all these things that take up their time and energy that prevent them from improving their relationships. It prevents them from bettering their health. It prevents them from making more money. And I can go on and on. So why not just be relentless and do everything you can in this moment to control the controllables and control what's in front of you, to say, you know what, I'm going to do everything today to make sure I don't get sick. How can I boost my immunity? How can I reduce my stress? How can I sleep better? How can I keep my body fat percentage down? How can I be less depressed? How can I be less anxious? What do I need to do? What do I need to do to connect with the people I love the most more? What can I control right now? Can I have, date night with my wife? Can I put together a puzzle with my kids? Can I connect on a Zoom call with my family once a week? Can I have a little, I say happy hour. I mean, if you can drink responsibly, having a happy hour with your friends or coffee, whatever it is. I'm just throwing ideas out there that people can actually do things positively that will improve who they are as human beings, to prevent them from getting sick, to prevent them from, losing relationships or losing their job or getting sick or getting mentally sick, so to speak. And I think people just need to be more, it's all about self-awareness. I mean, I think a lot of people, we're so fast, and you said we're so scattered. We don't take the time to practice the pause, take a step back and say, okay, put the brakes on, stop the car, let's get the map out, and let's see how we can get to that destination. Because what ends up happening is people are in this car and they're driving and driving and driving. What happens when you drive a car without a destination? You run out of gas, man, real quick, right? And then the car gets, breaks down and you're on the side of the road. You got to call people to bail you out and ask for help. When really all you had to do was take a map out and find out where you're going, or plug it in the GPS. And I think if people can just take that point right there that I just made, if they did take nothing else in this interview, nothing, I don't anything about my story, what I said about isolation, that point of having your GPS in life, the map of where you can narrow the gap between what you actually want and what you actually do, game over. Get that map out and say, okay, I want to be mentally strong. I want to come out of this pandemic healthy. I want to come out of this pandemic, creating a project that I wanted to create. I want my relationships to be better. Cool. How are you getting there? And what are you doing every day? And look at yourself, and every time you're making a choice, whether it's watching the news, whether it's, being on the phone for 2 hours talking politics that it's just bringing you down, how are those choices aligned with the destination you want to be going to?
Yeah, and what you said about the 20 minutes going for a walk or whatever is great advice. And 20 minutes is about the half-life of cortisol, which is interesting because a lot of people think that when they're not on drugs, they're not on drugs. But there's a lot going on with our neurochemistry, and a lot of times we're trying to ease a natural cycle of stress hormones and oxytocin and other social hormones and things like that, and all these different chemicals. But if you just do that pattern interrupt, and then about 20 minutes for me, sometimes I play guitar. I like it being physical. Sometimes it's, going for a walk or walking the dog. A lot of times it's just kind of like hanging out in the sun and breathing. But if you do that, then you will be, to your point, in a completely different mental state than you were before that 20 minutes when you were essentially jacked up on cortisol.
Yeah, and you have to control the neurotransmitters, right? Control the dopamine.
Yeah.
And it's like, if you can win that game of just controlling your dopamine and getting that rush in a positive way, you'll win. It's like, what can I do in this moment to make myself feel better? And also take a step back and say that, yeah, what actions can I take to not only help myself feel better, but that align with the person I want to be, right? Because sometimes when I say, well, just do what makes you feel better, well, somebody like, well, like drinking and doing drugs makes me feel better in that moment. But then you got to say, how does that align with who you want to be in the future? And you're right. If you can just reduce that half-life of the stress, of the pain. It's funny. I was, as we're recording this, I had, we were talking before the show, I had Rich Roll on my podcast, and he was talking about this very thing of reducing the half-life of the pain and of the adversity and whatever you're going through, right? Because if you can really take a step back and say, okay, how can I not make the situation worse? Like, it's going to be there. Like, life's going to suck. Right. But, and I love this analogy, and I'm going to keep it family friendly when I say this, but you got to choose your suck sometimes, man. Like, it really, when you're in that heat of the moment, you're in that pain and life's tough, it sucks. Right. It does.
Yeah.
So, I'm being honest.
But that's natural.
And I know, and it's okay. And I think the first step is acceptance, right? Because I think so many times when they're going through bad moments, whether they're depressed, they're more anxious that day, they're stressed, they financially took a hit, whatever the case may be, they all of a sudden, like, they go into this downward self-sabotage spiral because they think they're supposed to be perfect every single day. We live in a world, and I've said this a lot recently, where we're a bunch of imperfect perfectionists, right? We're all imperfect.
Yeah.
So if you can just accept the fact that whatever you're going through is normal and it's okay. And then the second part of that is it sucks. Like, but how do you want to embrace that suck? Do you want to move through it in an uncomfortable fashion where you're having to change some of your habits and you're going to go for walks every day instead of, watching Netflix? You're going to maybe eat like a healthy salad to make yourself feel better and then call a friend who's a mentor, somebody you trust. Are you going to put on like a funny movie to make you laugh instead of watching the news? Like, that's different because you're changing the cycle, you're changing the pattern. That becomes your new normal. But so that can be very uncomfortable. But what's also uncomfortable and can suck is repeating these same patterns every single day for years and years and years, and looking back with a bunch of shame, regret, and guilt with yourself and being like, I freaking wish I would have changed these simple things. Simple. It's not like you're asking somebody to go run a marathon. Simple things can make the biggest differences. You and I are both have experience in the health and wellness field. Like we know that the best that there's like 3 or 4 things that if everybody just did these 3 or 4 things, their health would be exponentially better. Drink more water, get more sleep, eat more whole foods, and move their body for like 20, 30 minutes, 5, 6 days a week. That's it. And I mean, yeah, you can make things more challenging, but we're in an obesity epidemic right now with America. People are overweight and obese. If people just did those 4 things every single day, like we're gonna win.
But it's so easy to have scattered energy these days, right? Like with all these different like messages coming from every direction all the time. All of us are always connected. We're not really wired for that, and we're certainly not wired to focus in that sort of position. And the thing that you described earlier, like kind of like the lockdown differentiation, is like humans don't like uncertainty. We don't get along with uncertainty very well, right? Like it's pretty easy to know that that things are one way and then just move forward. But if everything is up in the air and all of our information is kind of more superficial as it is now, like filtered through social media, filtered through shadow ban, censorship, AI algorithms, and like all this stuff before we can really communicate, it is hard to put things into action, even if they are pretty like simple and relatively easy. But, maybe there's another piece of this that people don't see, which is the consistency that adds up over time. It's not really easy for our human minds to see things that way, but that's definitely how health, fitness, wellness works. Is like the people who make it work for a lifetime are able to do the things that you described consistently. And if you just do those things, then like even if you color outside the lines sometimes, you still have that solid foundation that's going to be enough, because you're not just like chowing down at McDonald's, Burger King, and Taco Bell all the time.
I think it just comes down to everyone's trying to hit these home runs when they just need to be hitting singles.
Yeah,
right?
You're right.
I mean, literally, that's all they need to be doing.
Yep.
Like take the layup. Stop trying to dunk the basketball and just take the layup.
Yeah, and if they can't dunk, they walk away.
Exactly. So it's the little things every single day that add up. It's not about making some miraculous comeback story overnight. It's not about running a marathon in 3 days. It's not about losing 100 pounds in a week. It's about taking these small actions consistently every single day, right? I mean, that's how recovery works, right? I mean, I know for me and so many, we just focus on staying away from the substances and things that brought our life down for so long every single day. Just that one day. And I never went to AA or NA, but I mean, I can understand where they get the whole one day at a time thing. Is that literally just focusing on that day, staying away from drugs, staying away from people that brought me down, staying away from places that I shouldn't be going to, and then flipping that switch and saying, okay, now I know what I shouldn't be doing. What can I do that's healthy, that's going to move the needle in the pendulum in the other direction? And I think it also comes back to like a confidence thing, that so many people just don't have confidence within themselves to make that change because they're in the gutter, right? Their mental health is down the tubes. They've lost themselves. They're depressed. They can't see 3 feet in front of them. And I think it just comes back to just knowing that the only way for you to get confidence is to do those small things every day. Not doing them is going to make your life worse. And I think when people are able to kind of get their head above water a little bit and have some clarity and say, okay, the very thing I want is to feel better. And the only way for me to get there is to do these small things every single day. We live in a world, though, where we see highlight reels and we see jets and we see Maseratis and we see millions of followers. And we think that A, that's the end all be all. And B, we think that that's what that it happens overnight. And nothing like this happens overnight. We were just talking before we recorded. You've been doing this podcast now for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
10 years.
Right.
Right. And so many people are trying to get to the top of iTunes when they're doing their podcast for a week.
Yep. That's true.
So many people are trying to, run a marathon when they haven't even walked a mile.
Mm-hmm.
And just knowing that Every single person who ever ran a marathon had to start with 1 mile. Every person. But we get so caught up in this comparison trap where we're focusing our mile 1 to somebody else's mile 25. We're focusing our chapter 1 to someone's chapter 20. And if we can just let go of that thing alone, that's a big weight off our shoulders that we're able to actually start to move on our own race in a positive direction, because we don't have that pain of not fulfilling the destiny of somebody else we don't know on top of us anymore. We're able to let that go and say, okay, I'm not worried about my neighbor. I'm not worried about my followers on Instagram. I'm not worried about who I'm following on Instagram or what I'm watching. I'm more worried about like Doug and Abel or whoever's listening to the show and where I'm going. What steps can I take that are going to move me closer to that goal? Not to that goal, closer to the goal. Because there's not one person that has a 5, 10, 15-year goal that doesn't do the necessary things every single day. It's about just taking consistent action that align with your morals, your values, and your beliefs in that person that you want to become, and just doing that consistently.
And for you growing up, it's not like you've always been a fitness bunny or anything like that. Like you weren't athletic, right? Like you were overweight. So how did you take drugs or kind of escapism or numbness and start to funnel that energy into something that's good for you, like challenging your body with fitness?
I was forced, man. I mean, it's funny. Yeah. I mean, when I was incarcerated back in 2008, I had a horrific pill addiction. I was dealing drugs. So I was in jail. I got busted with a half pound of pot, $2,000 in cash, and I was in jail on felony drug charges. And I also was an addict, and I had a 400 milligram a day Oxycontin habit. And before that, I was involved with doing a lot of coke and smoking weed like every day. And when I say smoking weed, it wasn't like a joint. I mean, I was smoking like a quarter ounce of pot a day, like a lot of weed. Yeah. Yeah, it was interesting. And on top of that, I'm like 50 pounds heavier than I am now. So I'm about as mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually broken as they come at that point.
Yeah.
And so I reported to jail about a week after my 21st birthday. As you can imagine, I was freaked out. I was scared. I was crying. I was fearful. I had no hope in who I was going to become. I had nothing. I was completely broken. And I detoxed cold turkey for my first few weeks in jail. And for those who are listening, who maybe you've never experienced this or you don't really know what I'm talking about, it feels like you're trying to crawl out of your own skin. You have massive anxiety. You're uncontrollably vomiting, bowel movements. I mean, literally like the worst type of flu you can have for weeks. And then you snap out of that. And then you realize like, oh shoot, I'm now in jail. And it's just like this, I don't know, the kind of like light like just flashes before you in this pit of darkness after you get through this withdrawal, that your eyes are open. You're like, oh man, I'm in jail. And all these masks are off. All the masks I was wearing, whether it was the mask I was trying to fit in with my friends, or the mask of who I was trying to fake on social media, or the mask of who I was around my family, or the mask of who I was in a job that was all being shielded with the drugs, was gone. And it was just me, my emotions, my feelings, and Doug Bopst, like purely naked by myself. And my cellmate was like, you're going to start exercising. You're going to start working out with me when you get through your detox. And I was like, dude, no way. Are you kidding me? Have you seen me? At the time, I could have been a model for Pillsbury. Like I was one of those guys that was just like 40% body fat.
Yeah.
Literally. I was just doughy, pudgy. I was the guy who was like, close to 200 pounds, but couldn't throw a punch. Like I just, all of it was just fat. And I remember it was like that night after him, like kind of first mentioning it to me, I saw him working out, and this guy looked like a more jacked version of Brad Pitt from Fight Club. And that night he was doing like thousands of push-ups, hundreds of pull-ups, running like for hours. I was like, God, who is this guy? Like, what is wrong with him? And he just kept nudging me and encouraging me, like, you know, kind of heckling me. He's like, come on, man, you got to do it. You got to do it. You got to try it. And finally, after a couple of weeks of him bugging me about it, I decided to give exercise a try. And I got down to a push-up, couldn't do a push-up, could barely do one from my knees, couldn't even walk up and down the steps. And with his encouragement, training me in there every single day, I was and holding me accountable. I was able to do it. I was able to do a set of 10 push-ups and run a mile at the end of my 90-day sentence. And I felt this sense of confidence and self-esteem and rebirth inside of me that I never had before. And I felt like I was going to beat this drug addiction. I felt that I was going to get out and change my life. And it was just very euphoric for me because I never had this sense of accomplishment in my life. I mean, when I was in jail or before I went to jail, I had like 21 jobs by the time I was 21.
Wow.
Every time I tried to quit drugs, I never could. I never had any luck with women. I never had any luck with sports. Everything I tried in life, I failed at miserably, in my own opinion. And so when I was able to do those 10 push-ups and run that mile, I finally had something that I could hang my hat on and something that I was able to achieve. And that just literally flipped a switch in my brain. And I felt this new sense of Doug inside of me. And I had the confidence that I was going to beat drug addiction. And it wasn't the push-ups, the sit-ups, and the running necessarily that did it. It wasn't like I wasn't like, yeah, I did push-ups and I quit drugs. It was how they made me feel.
Yeah.
It was like I finally felt good about myself. And it wasn't because I'd lost the weight. I was like, wow, I finally felt good that I did what I should have done 10 years ago. I finally felt happy with who I was in the mirror, not because I was at a goal fitness-wise where I was. It was because I had this sense of that I was actually showing myself some self-love and self-care because I was focusing on bettering myself, something I had never really done.
Yeah.
And, when I went into jail, as I said, I was crying. When I left, I was crying because I didn't want to leave because I felt my life was changed so much, this transformation. And this guy, my cellmate, chose to really save my life before saving his own. And when I got out, he gave me a workout plan that I still have framed in my place and never forget where I came from.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He asked me I said to him, I said, how can I ever repay you? And he said, pay it forward, don't mess up. And I got out, stayed on the workout plan that he gave me, lost a bunch of weight, and then got to a place fitness wise where I lost, 40 or 50 pounds. It was like, 50 pounds. And it was very fit, that I wanted to become a trainer and help other people like use fitness to change their lives and pass the torch. And that's when I became a trainer. So I've been a trainer now for almost 10 years. And and so much has happened since, man. Fitness was the catalyst. Like I tell people, fitness can be the catalyst for so many other things in your life. When you're trying to get around better people, typically when you go to a gym, there's people in there that are looking to better themselves. When you're looking to gain confidence in your relationships or in your job, like the best way to do that is through exercise, right? When you're looking to develop focus and consistency and dedication, staying on a workout program teaches you that. It's not, I think people overcomplicate things. And it doesn't mean that you have to go out and do some gargantuan thing fitness wise where you got to go run a marathon or compete in a bodybuilding competition. Just get moving and stick to it. That's all that counts.
Yeah. Yeah. And it definitely adds up over time. But, it's so interesting because you talk about in your work the importance of surrounding yourself with, the right people. And you just happen to be locked in with a total health junkie who wouldn't give up until he helped you develop the same bug, right?
Yeah. And it wasn't without some sense of pain and discomfort on my end of me not wanting to do some certain things. And I remember I was just complaining constantly when I first started exercising because I was achy. I was embarrassed because when you're in a room in front of a bunch of grown men and you can't do a single push-up, there's a lot of shame. There's a lot of your ego obviously gets hurt. You're hyper uncomfortable in those moments. Because think about it. I would argue that one of the top factors that people don't go in the gym is because they are worried of what other people are going to think of them when they can't do a certain exercise, when they can't do a certain amount of time on a machine, when they can't get a certain weight up off their chest, right? So that was all right in my face right then and there. So it was easy when I got out and when I actually joined the gym for me to go and work out in front of other people. I was like, oh, I've done this. I was in front of a bunch of people when I couldn't do a push-up. How you imagine going into a gym and not being able to do a push-up, the shame you would have inside of you for somebody who hasn't been in a gym for a long time. There's a lot of shame that comes with that.
But it's mostly invented, right? Like, because the other people don't care. Like, they're
Well,
around.
I was going to say,
Yeah.
it's not from them. It comes from us. We put so much stock and we create this story inside of our head, and we think that all these people are actually looking at what we're doing, but really they don't. It's like we end up creeping them out even more because we're staring at them to see if they're actually paying attention to us than the fact that like they're actually looking at like what we're doing.
Yeah. The only time they're going to pay attention is if you drop a weight on yourself. That's about it. Like, they'll come over to help.
And they'll be like, yo, you see that guy? Remember him? Like, you know, it's a good way to make friends, I guess, right? But and there was times when I was in jail where I would just complain, and we would be like after a workout, before a workout, when I was blaming my friends, I was blaming my parents, I was blaming being bullied. And I'll give like the PG version. He just said, man, quit being a wuss. Like he said, quit being a wuss. He said, did somebody like put a gun to your head when your parents got divorced and tell you to do drugs? I'm like, no. He's like, did somebody force you to sell drugs? I'm like, no. He's like, did somebody, put a knife to your stomach? And I'm just, painting a picture for people to be able to like really grasp this idea. Did somebody, put a knife to enforce you to act the way you did? And I said no. And he was like, you got yourself here. Nobody forced you into this. And he said, you can be a man or you can be a wuss. He's like, you can be a man and take responsibility for your choices. No, you got yourself here. There's plenty of people who get bullied, plenty of people whose parents get divorced. There's plenty of people who go through hard times that don't end up in jail, right? There's plenty of people that go through these experiences that don't end up in this place. You did because of the way you chose. So you can be a man and know that if you got yourself here, and it's on you to get yourself out of this hole. It's on you to turn your life around. It's on you to make the right decisions. Or you can be a wuss like most people will do and go cry in the corner and say, woe is me, and blame other people for your problems. And he's like, which one do you want to be? And it gave me this sense of power that I was like, this person in my life really had no skin in the game. He wasn't my family. He wasn't somebody I worked for. It gave me this choice and this sense of wisdom and guidance to know that, dude, it's on you to change, man. It's not on anybody else. And it wasn't coming from somebody close to me. It was coming from somebody that had nothing to lose with, as far as me. And then once I took that first small step, things changed. It wasn't, my mindset did not change after the 10 push-ups. My mindset changed after me actually having the courage to get down there and do a push-up. That's when that shift happened. That's the hardest part of transformation and change, is those first few steps. Because once you get going with it, once you get that sense of accomplishment, those endorphins, you want more of that. And the only way to get more of that is to keep doing it. And once you find that you can attach that same feeling to exercise, meditation, helping other people, whatever your shtick is, that same feeling that you can to doing drugs, like it's on. Like you won't look back. I promise you won't look back. I promise you.
Yeah. And you can hone that energy into focusing on your craft, whatever that craft may be, whether it's a hobby or profession or just like a backup thing. It's part of the fun of all this.
Well, and I think too, you have to channel that, we talked about earlier, channel that negative energy into something positive. I would literally go on these long runs, or even when I was doing push-ups, and I would think about what made me mad. I would think about all the girls who said no to me. I would think about what happened with my family or in school. And I would channel that energy into something positive.
Yeah. Yeah. Kind of just like a kid, like punching a pillow. There's an element to that we can apply later in life in a way that's not destructive.
Well, it's that energy has to go somewhere. It can either go into something that's creative or something that's destructive, right?
Yeah.
So you can use it in a way that's kind of, and I mean, think about it. You see all these, you see people that, break up with a girl or get all upset and they write a song about it because it's like healing for them to do something about that,
This is
right?
me right here, yeah.
Yeah. But the flip side is you could break up with that girl and go get hammered every day for 2 years and not get
Yeah.
over it.
Yep.
And that's destructive. Where at least now if you're playing the guitar or doing something meaningful and you're channeling those emotions because you're still thinking about it. To write a song about somebody that you loved or whatever, you still have to think about that feeling. But then it's being channeled into something that's productive and not something that's destructive.
Yeah, and you have to work through those feelings instead of just getting hammered at the bar. Feeling anxiety or feeling this thing that just sets off that cycle for the rest of your life. You're never going to be able to escape it or get the buzz that you're looking for. Whereas you might just like write a couple albums out of that terrible relationship, and it works, I've been doing that my whole life. I stand by it. I've said it many times. I'd be absolutely insane without playing music.
Right. And that's your thing. That's your outlet. And I think that's what people miss is they don't have these tools in their tool belt to know that, okay, when things get hard and something goes down, what are they pulling out? Are they pulling out the tools of music? Are they pulling out the tools of meditation, fitness, positive people, podcasts? Are they pulling the other tools out that are a bit sharper, that are, might cut you if you grab it too hard? Alcohol, sex, money. And it's just, you just have to make those hard decisions. And once you make it, it doesn't become easy, but you start to understand and you start to create this new sense of normalcy for yourself and in your brain that it's like a trick. It's like a trigger for your mind now. It's like, okay, you have to change the way you attach certain behaviors to an emotion. So if your emotion is whenever every time you're down, you're used to snorting a line of cocaine, that's your normal. That's going to be your normal. But if you change that and say, you know what, I'm down, I'm going to go for a run. I'm down, I'm going to go for a run. Then you start to reattach and change different behaviors to emotions. So when I would get, triggered, this word gets used everywhere now. It's like, so you hear that so much, but when I would get a trigger or craving for drugs back in the day, whether it was something that stressed me out or I got into a fight with somebody or I got burned for drugs, my reaction and my behavior would be to do drugs to numb me out. And I needed to keep chasing that numbing feeling because I did it for so long that I had to keep getting that same numbing feeling. But when I stopped doing that and I started reattaching that behavior of exercise and meditation or writing or whatever it was, when I felt that same emotion, when that same emotion would come, my first thought wasn't drugs. My first thought was, how can I get a run and where can I go? I don't care if it's 9:00 at night. I don't care if it's 5 a.m. Like even now during COVID, like I've really had to lean in and get back into running, not because I want to get in better shape, because for my mind.
Yeah, me too.
I mean, seriously. And I think it's a lot of people, you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't just at least admit and raise your hand that you're having a hard time, because people are having a hard time. Like, and if somebody tells you they haven't experienced a hard time during this, I mean, they're lying to you. Everybody's life in some way has been affected.
For sure.
I mean, yeah. Are people making great things? Are people handling things phenomenally in some aspects of their life? Absolutely. But with that being said, in that same breath, most people's mental health has been affected in some way. Most people's sense of uncertainty has been affected in some way. Most people have somebody close to them where their well-being has been affected in some way.
Yeah. So that's why it's so important more than ever to focus on that internal locus of control and take the reins of our own life. But man, Doug, it's been so much fun talking to you. What's the best place for people to find your books and your work?
I mean, I would say the place I'm the most active on is on social media. So I Instagram at Doug Bopst. And then I'm also the host, like I said, of the Adversity Advantage podcast, where I interview people from all walks of life on the tips and tricks that they've used to turn different trials into triumphs and really use their hard times to create something special. And my books are all available on Amazon. www.dougbopst.com is the best place to find me with, some more, if you want to learn more about my backstory, or even you can get my books that way and connect with me there. I mean, it's obviously good, cool to hear from people, to see and hope to see if what I shared here on this episode, if it impacted you in a positive way.
For sure. Man, Doug, thank you so much for taking the time.
Abel, man, thank you.
Hey, it's Abel one last time, and I just want to say thank you for listening to this episode of Fat Burning Man. Before you go, please smash that like button, hit subscribe, or even leave us a quick review. It helps so much more than you even realize. And if you can think of someone else who you care about, friend, family member, anyone else who might appreciate this free show, then please take a quick second just to share it with them. Word of mouth is really the way that we've grown this show over the years. We have more than, at this point, 4 awards in independent media, 50 million downloads. We couldn't do any of this without you, so we really appreciate it. If you'd like to get in touch with me, then please follow me under Abel James or Fat Burning Man on your social media platform of choice, and I'll do my best to get right back to you. Now, if you want to keep this show coming to you, you can do something really quickly here. My wife Allison and I, along with a very small team, depend on listeners like you to make this show happen week after week. To join our next challenge coaching group or get in touch with me one-on-one, visit fatburningman.com. We also make group coaching free with your subscribe and save orders from our family company, Wild Superfoods, which you can find at wildsuperfoods.com. And if you'd like, you can throw a few bucks into the tip jar as a one-time donation, or become a contributing member of our group on Patreon. Just look up Abel James on Patreon, and you can join in the fun for as little as a few bucks and get my international best-selling book and audiobook as a special thanks. You can also find that page at fatburningman.com/tipjar. Now, a quick disclaimer for all those legal eagles out there. The Fat Burning Man Show provides general information and discussions about health and related subjects. The information provided in this show or in any related materials are not intended and should not be construed as medical advice, nor is the information a substitute for professional medical expertise, diagnosis, or treatment. The opinions and views expressed on this show have no relation to those of any academic, hospital, health practice, or other institution, including corporate overlords. We don't have any of those. If you or any other person has a medical concern, I wholeheartedly encourage you to consult with your healthcare provider. Whew, okay. Don't forget to join our newsletter over at fatburningman.com. When you sign up for our email, I'll even send you a wild quick start guide along with a few of our ridiculously tasty recipes, even Allison's famous chocolate cookies, as a special thanks for signing up. This is Abel James signing off. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great week.